You check your account balance more than you check your own values. Admit that. Not once a week, multiple times a day. A quiet, compulsive ritual you dress up as staying responsible, when really what you're doing is asking a number for permission to feel okay about yourself. That is not financial literacy. That is a leash. And the terrifying part is that you put it on yourself. Here is what nobody says out loud. The anxiety you feel about money is rarely about survival. For most people watching this, the lights are on, there is food, the rent is paid. The dread is not about starving. The dread is about identity. You have fused who you are with what you have, and when those two things become the same thing, you do not own wealth. Wealth owns you completely. Stay with me to the end of this, because by the time we are done, you will have a single, precise instrument, a mental protocol the Stoics called by a name that has been dangerously mistranslated for centuries. You will know what it actually means, and tonight, when you feel the pull to check that number again, you will have something real to reach for instead. Seneca spent 3 years exiled on the bare, wind-scoured island of Corsica. Stripped of his Rome, his connections, his reputation, his audience, most men in that position collapse inward, because they discover too late that everything they called themselves was actually just everything they had accumulated. Without the marble columns and the social orbit, there was nothing left to stand on. Seneca did not collapse, he wrote. He thought. He argued ferociously with his own fear in letters he could not even send. He made a devastating observation during those years. He said that a man who cannot bear poverty will not bear wealth either. Not because poverty is noble, but because the man who needs the number to feel secure will always need a larger number. The threshold moves. It always moves. That is not a personal failure. That is the geometry of the trap. The first principle is this: security is a posture, not a position. You cannot arrive at a number that finally grants you peace. Epictetus, a limping old man who spent his later years teaching loud, ungrateful Roman teenagers who came to philosophy looking for clever arguments rather than hard truths, understood something about what is actually inside a person's control. He watched young aristocrats walk into his school wealthy and walk out spiritually hollow, not because money corrupted them, because they had never built anything inside themselves that could stand independent of what they possessed. The practical takeaway: every single day, name one thing you value about yourself that a market correction cannot touch. Not talent. Talent earns money. Something deeper. Your integrity in a hard conversation. Your consistency when no one is watching. Build that list slowly. Make it load-bearing. Now there is a word you have almost certainly heard: apatheia. You have seen it in every self-help book that folds stoicism into a tidy morning routine. Every wellness account distills it into not caring about outcomes. Detachment, serenity, a kind of enlightened shrug. That is not what the word means. Not even close. The ancient Greeks built apatheia from the prefix a, meaning without, and pathos, meaning the violent, uncontrolled movement of the soul. Apatheia was not the absence of feeling, it was the refusal to be dragged. It was the muscular, disciplined act of standing in the current of desire and fear without being swept downstream. It was hard, it required training. Modern self-help culture took a scalpel and a fighting concept and turned it into a decorative candle. You were sold a counterfeit. The real thing demands far more from you. Here is the mistake you are making right now, this week, possibly this morning. You are letting your financial number narrate your self-worth in real time. A dip in the balance, and your confidence dips with it. A good month, and you walk slightly taller. You have installed a live feed between your bank account and your nervous system. And because that feed runs constantly, you are never fully present in any conversation, any relationship, any quiet moment, because part of your attention is always down there, monitoring the number, waiting for it to authorize your next mood. That is the real poverty, not the amount, the dependency. The second principle, break the live feed. Arrius Didymus, philosopher and close advisor to Augustus Caesar, spent his life mapping how men of power maintained their inner integrity inside the most toxically competitive, cutthroat institution in the ancient world. He argued that a man must have a soul that functions independently of his circumstances, not ignorant of circumstances, independent of them. Practically choose a fixed, scheduled time to review your finances. Once, then close it. The rest of your hours belong to your life, not to surveillance. Discipline the checking the same way you would discipline any compulsion. The number does not need your constant attention to be real, but your character does need yours. If any part of this has landed, let it register with a like, not for an algorithm, but as a private acknowledgement that something here is true. And if you are choosing to keep building this kind of clarity, subscribe. That is the choice of a person who takes their own mind seriously. The third principle is the most difficult. It requires you to hold two things simultaneously. Money is a tool, an important one. Neglecting it is not wisdom. It is negligence dressed as detachment. The Stoics were not ascetics. Marcus Aurelius ruled the wealthiest empire on earth. He buried 8 of his children. He watched his people die by the thousands in a plague he could not stop. He had every resource imaginable, and none of it could purchase the things that actually mattered to him. He did not abandon wealth. He simply refused to confuse it with himself. He used it without mistaking it for proof of anything. That is the complete posture. Full engagement with money as a practical reality, and zero engagement with money as a verdict on your worth. Here is what I want you to sit with, and I mean genuinely sit with. Do not scroll past this. If every number disappeared tomorrow, every account, every asset, every credential that signals your status, and what remained was only the texture of how you actually treat people, and the quiet truth of who you are at 3 in the morning when no one is watching, would you recognize yourself? Would you respect what you found? Or would you discover, in that silence, that the person you thought you were has been the bank balance all along?